Hi, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. Excited for today's guest. Um, he is a fund manager and the founder of Sana Wealth. A friend of mine I've recently gotten to know, Al Dominguez. And with that, let's get going. Hey, Al, welcome.
How you doing, Kyle? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope I didn't butcher your last name. What could you just go like say your name, full name? So I
Yeah. So my name is Al Dominguez, and
okay.
I'm a fund manager at Sana Wealth, and I'm actually a co-founder at Sana Wealth. I have two other partners, which makes my job so much easier and enjoyable. And we help investors that are looking to get into multifamily, but they don't have that connection on how to do it. And they can connect with us, and we can offer them opportunities to get into the multifamily space. And so, yeah, that's what we do at Sana Wealth.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that model. I think it's a great way um, to for someone either to get started or someone that doesn't have the experience and expertise to still invest in real estate. So yeah, before we get into I guess the real estate, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you've done so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So my real estate journey really started in 2021, um, when I started hearing Bigger Pockets. And on there, I heard this individual, an investor that was investing in multifamily. And I got so curious that I decided to give him a call. And from that call, they're like, if you want to get into real estate and multifamily, you should start like wholesaling, do like single family stuff. And you should follow this guy named Pace Morby. So I started following Pace Morby on YouTube. You know the story. Like, people go to YouTube and they start consuming all the content. But I realized that real estate is not that difficult to get into and acquire assets and build generational wealth, through real estate. So I started a lending business from there in 2022. I started wholesaling and assigning contracts. I had a partner, and they were on the dispo side. I was the acquisition side, and did that for a while. And then at the beginning of 23, I was like, I'm putting all this energy, calling sellers, calling brokers. Why not put that energy and effort into something big? And started to learn multifamily. I joined Vina Jetty's free Facebook group, and I joined all her Zooms. And from there, I started learning about multifamily. Around May of 2023, I had the opportunity to start a fund of funds to help raise capital for one of Vina Jetty's big projects she had in Arizona. We successfully closed on that deal. It was a 400 unit um, asset, $131 million. And Sana Wealth, we were partners in raising capital for that deal, and been doing that since May. And capital raising, you never give up. So you're always raising capital. So we're raising capital and, building relationship with investors for the next opportunity. And in August, I had the opportunity to be a general partner in a boutique hotel in Puerto Rico. And those are pretty much the deals that I've been in as a professional investor. And personally, I have a portfolio as an owner of 258 units as a limited partner.
Awesome. That's incredible. I love that you just like dove in and took action. Like there's a lot of people that consume content and never really put it to put it to work. So that's I love seeing that, and I'm kind of still in that consuming stage, and we're trying to trying to put it into action now. But I like to talk about. So you mentioned Pace Morby and Vina. I think that's kind of the same route I took. That's I think I started with watching Pace's stuff and then found Vina through Pace, and then I think that's how we met was in Vina inside of Vina's group, if I remember correctly. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's just like the I consider them mentors of mine, even though it's not necessarily like one on one. But I think I've really shifted my mindset by listening to them. It's like opened my mind to what's actually possible, and Vina's like they're both like just go givers and like just awesome people. So, would you mind just talking a little bit about that? What that's been like for you being part of their communities?
yeah, that's a great question, Kyle, and I believe that is the secret sauce to anything you want to accomplish in life. You know, we're brought into a system, educational system, where they give you the belief that you cannot do anything on your own. You have to, I'm sorry, that you have to do things on your own, and that you need to know have all the knowledge, you need to have all the degrees, and you have to be financially set before you can do anything. And is the opposite. You know, being part of those communities has been very important in my journey, because without those communities, I would not have that support, right, to take action, to know that the community wants you to succeed, uh, to have resources available because you're part of this community. So at the beginning of the year, I set myself with big goals, and a big component of that was being actively involved in a community. And so I joined Raising Private Money with Amy Majori, because I understood that in a real estate transaction, capital, it's always very important. And you know this, you know, from your business. So if you don't have that skill set, it's going to be difficult to raise capital for your deals, because deals will always come. There will always be deals. Someone will bring them to you, or the market cycle will bring those opportunities to you. The capital is the one that you have to always be kind of farming, in a sense, because it is cyclical depending on what's happening in the market, and investors may be afraid. So it's our job to educate them and be like, okay, this market is challenging, but it's not impossible. Or this market is great. There's going to be bumps along the road, and you have to educate them on that. So community definitely has been a big component in my journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think of all the skill sets to have when it comes to commercial real estate, raising capital is probably the most powerful one to have. Like people always need capital for their deals. So I want to ask you about the. I believe you're part of the Multify, and you were at the live event, right? I I missed out on that one, but yeah, it was kind of like a little bit of FOMO going on with seeing all the all the stuff happening there. So what was that like for you?
Yes. So joining the Multify Masterclass was very. It was like a pivotal moment too in my journey. You know, because I already had the experience from, you know, starting the Fund of Funds, but now you have the connections inside a group of people that are very like-minded, and they want to achieve more and more. And you're really getting into the room and having access to these individuals, you know, individuals that may have capital, individuals that have the operations resources and experience, or they may have the sourcing opportunities because they're in the industry, in the commercial real estate industry. So they have a inside view of things. So going to masterclass was an amazing experience. Vina Jetty and her team, they always put out the white glove treatment, and you know, it was a very personalized experience, down to to the training material was kind of geared towards you, the individual, and not like a general, you know, information. So that made the experience more enjoyable because you realize that someone put effort into making sure that you got the most out of the the event, and the event was just full of so many resources and value. Like, her business partner Priya opened up her her book and said, "This is how we operate our business from start to finish." So being part of that, somebody that's a really high level and sharing that knowledge, it's going to be a game changer. You're going to see a lot of people that attended that. You're going to see them in the next year or so, next coming years. You're going to see their transformation because the blueprint has been given to you. All you got to do now is take action.
Hmm. Yeah, I like how I've never seen that before. Like they had like personalized gifts for each person there, which is was pretty cool to see. But I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about the fund of funds structure and some of
Hmm.
the benefits to that. Why would why should someone that is maybe newer to real estate consider going that route?
Yes, and whenever I get this question, I have like a two-step answer. Anyone that's trying to get into large multifamily, I would say first, try to invest in somebody else's deal first and see how that experience is for you. You get to see like what the operation looks like, what the communication looks like, uh, and how does the team operate. You get to ask questions. This is kind of like you're hiring somebody, so you ask the questions like, how would you handle a capital call, or how many years of experience do you have, how many cycles have you gone through. So that's the first step that I would tell anyone. If you can do it, if you have resources and they're sitting not doing anything, and we need to put them to work in a secure asset that's insured, then that's an opportunity. That's how I started. I invested in a group, and I was able to learn from them. Their underwriting process, the how do they source the deal, and the due diligence. They have like Zooms that they explain what's happening with the asset and the business plan. So all of those things are so valuable, as you're starting out, that you don't have, maybe you're not part of a mentorship, or you're not part of a community that's sharing that with you. That is a great way to get that information. If you can't do that, then the fund of funds structure is by far the easiest way to do, because you're not, as a fund manager, your job is to be transparent with your investor base. So if you have a pool of investors that that want to invest, you have those investors. Now you can present them opportunities, and your job is to manage that relationship and making sure that you're transparent and that you're raising the capital the lawful way. And I say lawful because there are information out there that is not correct, and you know people that are trying to get into multifamily fall into it, and then they realize, oh, I I made a mistake, right? And the SEC does not play nice when you make a mistake, so it can be financially um, a big mistake, and it can your reputation too. So the fund of fund model, you are raising capital the lawful way. You're creating a PPM for your investors, which they get to see all the transparency and the fees and the business plan, everything that goes into having a normal um, syndication, but they get to see that on a much lower level. And you also have to disclose like any fees that you're charging for running the fund. The one big difference between a fund of funds and a syndication, for instance, is in a fund of funds, you're not managing the asset. like hands-on. You're not sourcing the deal. You're not doing the due diligence. You're not putting it on the contract. You're not managing the business plan. All you do is just bring capital to that opportunity and foster those relationships. And I've seen people that are trying to skip that step and skip capital raising, and they go straight to like, I want to be a general partner. They don't understand they're going to be juggling so many different things to start out, and at the same time you have to do the capital raise. And if you have you have EMD that's coming hard, that is just a lot of pressure because you're doing so much. So you got to have your team in place. You got to have your processes in place. You got to have your partners on the same page. They got to be like, we're doing this full time. We're not doing this part time. And we have a W-2. There's a lot of moving parts to have a full syndication for someone that's starting out. Now, if you have an active role and you're partner with other GPs in your team are experienced, that might be a different story, right? But you have to have an active role in that GP in order to be compensated for it. And so that's the main difference between a fund manager and a fund of funds and a GP syndication.
Got it. Yeah, that's very helpful. I curious. So you touched on it a little bit, but I'd like to, if you could just dive a little bit deeper into like what kind of questions to ask a GP team to kind of vet them when considering bringing capital to a deal, because
Mhm.
like the deal is important, but the first you kind of gotta actually see if the team is confident, and so what kind of questions would you ask?
Well, the very minimum you should ask, how do they handle a capital call, right? Because that's important. When things get hard, how is this team going to react, right? When the pressure is on, how are they going to react? They may be talking to you one way in a Zoom call, but what happens when things are tough? Like, are you going to stop talking to me? Are you going to call me and say I'm going to need money, to fix my mistake? So asking that question is probably the number one. The question I will ask. The other question I would say is, how often are you going to be communicating with with me? And you want to make sure that they're communicating more often than less. I've heard stories of people that invested in a syndication and they have not heard from the general partners in 10 months.
Wow.
I mean, what does that tell you? That, to me, that's a red flag, and that's why I say it's so important to first maybe invest or ask these questions, right? Before you invest, because it will tell you a lot about the operator, right?
Hmm.
So communication is important. How often and the method of communication. For us at Sana Wealth, we have a monthly newsletter that we send out our investors. We also send them out updates throughout the month, regardless. Like, if, for instance, if right now we're starting in tax season, so we're advising our investors to reach out to their tax strategists and CPAs and let them know, hey, we're going to aim to get your K1s on time, but always, communicate to your accountant or CPA that they should file an extension, just to make sure that you're covered for your taxes. And so that kind of communication does not need to be sent on a monthly newsletter. It can be sent when you have that information available. So we do that too. Is if it's important for our investors to know, we send it right away for them to know. Then we're conducting quarterly Zooms with our investors just to give them an update um, on the business plan, just to answer any questions they have. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of our investors are brand new to multifamily, so they have a lot of questions. So
Hmm.
it's our job as fund managers to keep them informed and answer any questions they may have. And it's not perfect, but it's part of our DNA and culture that we want to communicate faster. And bad news, we want to communicate extremely fast. And so far, we haven't had the bad news, but that's the question you want to ask. It's like, how fast would you communicate if something happens that is affecting your business plan? You don't want to you don't want to find out about it on a phone call saying we actually need extra money. You know. And as
Hmm.
far as capital calls, you want an operator that will say, "Well, we will take care of any capital calls internally before we go out to the investors." That's what you want to hear. So let the operator be like, "We have to figure this out internally because we made a mistake in our assumptions or pro forma, whatever it may be." Ideally, you don't want to be put in that position, but if it does, that's the kind of answer you want. It's like, you know, my bad. We own up and we're going to take care of it internally between the GPs and the companies before we go to the investors.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard Mina say that quite a few times to communicate the good news fast and the bad news faster. So I like that.
Yes.
That's and I guess it's probably for a general partner, it's probably easy to say that, but once it comes down to it, it might be a tougher conversation. I'm curious. So what is a fund manager's role? Let's say after the deal is closed, like there's I'm guessing there's probably a lot of investor relations that goes into that. And I think you talked about that a bit, but just kind of go over that
Yeah.
at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, as fund managers, that's when the investor relations aspect of the deal comes in. We are communicating with our investors when distributions are being sent out. We're making sure that all the portal and documentation is up to date for them to review and see. We are communicating about, like, right now we're communicating on tax season and K1s for our investors, because most investors, they're looking for that tax efficiency, right? Some may be looking for just capital preservation, but if they're looking for those tax efficiencies, um, you don't want to mess that up for your investor. And we know that there's things that are out of your control, right? Like, there's going to be a high demand for your CPA during this time, but the idea is you want to under promise and over deliver. And so, but if you're communicating that with your investors, then there should be no surprise for them, you know. So we're doing a lot of that, a lot of building relationships with them. We love to educate our investors. We want them to eventually be their fund managers or have their own GP position. So we communicate with them, and for us at Sana Wealth, we're still small enough. We have under 100 investors, so we kind of have more of a personal relationship with them as well. So, any of them can call us at any time, and we're happy to answer any questions. And if we don't have the answer, we know who to go to get those answers. So I don't know if that answers the question. Right now, it's just a lot of nurturing and culturing investors, and I think I mentioned earlier we never stop um, raising and looking for equity partners. We always looking for them. So we have one-on-one calls with potential investors. We talk about projects that we worked on in the past, and just to get to see, kind of get a gauge like where they are in their investment journey.
Hmm. That makes sense. What I'm curious. So as a fund, does it normally kind of mirror as far as the equity structure, does it normally kind of mirror the project level?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kyle. So, and I think you kind of touched on it earlier, but so we don't have a GP position in the deal, which is different than a syndication. Um, so as a fund manager, all your job is to manage the fund and give returns to our investors that we promise them on the PPM and the subscription agreement. So that's that's uh, that's different than a GP, because a GP, you yourself and the GP have ownership of the asset. As fund managers, we do not have ownership of the asset. What we do have is income from presenting the opportunity. So we do have acquisition fee, we do have management fees, we have disposition fee. There's other fees you can charge, like administrative fees. It's up to you and your SEC attorney to decide, what's going to be your structure of fees. And what happens is our investors, they give the pool of money or resources to us, and we invest in the parent fund as one investor. So the Sana Wealth LLC will invest in next example in Vina Jetty's deal as one. And not every operator does this, so don't quote me that this is what the standard is, but um, normally we get a discount in the investment, and that discount is what gives us the acquisition fee, and then the rest of the fees are generated through the income that the fund generates.
Got it. That makes sense. Um, see, what was I had a question kind of right like on the tip of my tongue and kind of slipped. Oh, I know it. I got it now. For someone that is considering going that route, what obviously there's some startup costs involved. What does that look like as far as forming the entity and all that, getting that set up?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it depends who the SEC attorney is and who the lead sponsor in the deal is. So I can only speak to our scenario, but we use the same SEC attorney that Vina uses. So if anybody is looking for a top-notch SEC attorney that only specializes on securities and exchange law, Nick McGrew is the guy that you want to talk to. He's so versatile and knowledgeable in this space. So doing a fund with Nick and Vina, it's going to be a lot less than if you trying to partner with somebody else and then bringing that to Nick, that to create the documents, because he already knows the parent fund, so he's not really reinventing the wheel that much. It will be different, and the parent PPM will be attached to our PPM to our investors, so they get to see it fully. It's fully transparent. But the fees may vary. I would say anywhere between $8,000, $10,000 versus having like a full syndication. That could be 40 to 50 or even 100,000, depending on the deal, and the structure of the deal. So as far as cost, is more doable to start a fund, and all those fees you can get reimbursed back through the acquisition fee. So um, it could be literally zero startup costs if you plan it right and you have a really good um, raise. It could be out of pocket zero, and then that's get paid through the acquisition.
Hmm. Got it. Yeah,
And
I go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
now, I was just gonna say too that a lot of those fees are, the creation of your entities, the creation of the documents that you need, the PPM, and the review of the OM. and there's filings that you have to do with the SEC. They're just mandatory because of the exceptions that you have to follow. And there's the blue sky notices too. So depending on what states your investors reside, you're gonna have to file with the state, letting them know, hey, even though we're exempt from registering, we have an investor in your state, and you have to file those fees. Those fees, every state is different. I wish it was like uniform, but every state is different. So all of those fees are what's going to be your startup costs.
Got it. Yeah, I like that you mentioned Nick. He's probably the most interesting attorney I've ever come across. He's a fun guy, and we love just hearing him
Yes.
speak. And it sounds like it's could be pretty economical. To partner with Vina and him on a deal. And I also like the as you mentioned like the full transparency of having that parent PPM
Mhm.
attached, so that the investor can see kind of what's going on in between, right? So I love that idea. Man, I feel like this has been a master class on on the funds, but kind of wrapping up here. This podcast, I named it a real impact. I It's kind of focused on real estate and education, but also making an impact. So what does that
Mhm.
mean to you? Making an impact on the world.
Wow, that's a very deep question. But the the way I would say is, you know, I'm from Puerto Rico originally. I was born in the States, but raised in Puerto Rico, and all the knowledge and all the resources and things that we have here in the States were not available to a lot of people in my community. And to me, impact means if you have the knowledge and the information, it's your job to share that with somebody else or with the community that you're a part of. Share it with your family, right? Because, and you heard this, Vina talks about this. A rising tide rises all boats. So that's 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 what this life is about. Is not just raising yourself, but raising others that may be behind you or are next to you, right? For me, my family, leaving them a legacy and helping them understand that there's a different way to build wealth, and once you have that wealth, you can share that and share those resources with others. It's very important, and so I want to share that. And so every day, you think about that. It's like, how am I helping someone level up a little bit, or how am I providing value that they see that, if Al can do it, then I can do it myself too. And because, like I said, I started this back in May, and now I'm talking on a podcast, and I'm a fund manager, and I'm working on more deals and leveling up. So I think it's our duty to give back and share that information once you have it.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that explanation. And yeah, I think it's true that especially for some of us that were born here in the States, like we take it for granted, like all the resources we have at our fingertips. And I love how you like just you're a go-giver, and like I see it, in the community, just people talking about, how they enjoy, just being around you, and all the knowledge you just willingly give. So appreciate that. Um, but
Absolutely.
I guess before we wrap up, a couple questions I like to ask. So I love reading, and most entrepreneurs that I know, kind of enjoy it too. So I'm curious, do you have any books that you could recommend for someone, real estate or just I guess mindset, personal development, anything?
Yeah, I love that question. I also feel like reading is such a empowerment to anything that you're trying to accomplish, because you're not reinventing the wheel. You're just learning from someone that's already doing it or is ahead of you. So you can implement those things like right away from day one. So reading is such a big part of my journey and my days. I love reading books. So um, the one I'm reading right now, I would say Relentless by Tim Grover. Uh, I'm a I'm a big fan of sports, particularly basketball, and he was a personal trainer and coach to Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and many other, big time athletes that have a pedigree of winning and of taking massive action in their careers, and having access to that information is just so valuable. So that would be one that I would recommend to anyone looking to just see like how can I get started or what's stopping me from moving on to the next level, because you have what it takes already, and no one can take that away from you. So it's up to you to decide how am I going to utilize that energy instead of emotion, um, in my journey or your journey. That's one I would recommend. The other one, um, the power of habits or habit. Charles Duhigg. That one is a really good one too. It helped me to have a routine and create good habits that help my life, right, or help you accomplish things. So those are two really good books I would recommend for anyone. And I know they're
Awesome.
not real estate related, but uh, I think everything is in the mind. Anything we do, it doesn't have to be real estate. It could be entrepreneurship. It's the mind that will drive your journey.
Yeah, I'd say the books that have had the most impact on me actually aren't even real estate books. They're more geared towards mindset. So that's
Yeah,
perfectly valid here. And I guess final question: if you had to do start over in your career, your journey, is there anything you would do differently? And if so, what would it be?
differently. I would believe in myself a lot sooner. I think looking back on my life, I believed on what somebody else was telling me and believing in what a system was telling me, uh, and and not believing in really like, well, what's important to me and what's going to make me happy doing, right. um, so even though I don't want to change my past because it made me the person I am today, I wish I had taken that step and said, um, what makes you really happy and pursue that regardless of what anyone tells you. Just be relentless at it and go for it, and kind of put your blinders on and be like, I'm gonna move forward on this regardless of other people's opinion and thoughts. And that's probably the biggest advice I'll give myself. Look back.
That is great advice, and I think that's a great way to end this podcast. So thank you for coming on, and where can people find you and reach out to you?
Probably the best way is you can find me on Instagram at Al underscore Dominguez underscore. And yeah, on there, that's where I live the majority of my time. It's uh, it's on Instagram.
Awesome. I will drop the links in the description, and yeah, thank you for everyone for watching, and definitely go and check out what Al is doing. He's just a great guy, and I love just watching your growth, Al. So that appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you having me.
Yep, for sure.